We are, it was fun to start off with that chant. Anita, you got to get up.
Yeah, come on up, Anita.
There's no sitting back there. Sorry, Anita. Pardon?
That's all right. We'll interpret for you.
Your aura is lovely. The pilgrimage we put together about 9 or 10 months ago in talking with Arjuna and Shivani. We had so much fun on the Italy pilgrimage that we thought, well, where can we go together next, and how can we deepen the inspiration and the connection with spirit? And we were thinking of going back to Italy and over to Medjugorje. And then Arjuna said, well, gosh, why don't we just go to the Holy Land? And the second he said it, we could feel the magic in it. There was just light. And there hadn't been a U.S. pilgrimage to the Holy Land since the 1980s. So we figured there would be, through Ananda, of course, we figured there would be a huge huge pool of people that had been yearning to go. And so we called all our pilgrims and put the word out. And we had like 25 or 30 people kind of say, yeah, we want to go, we want to go, we want to go. And then as time passed, and so Arjuna, we were talking about 30 or 40 people probably being the right number, and it looked like we were going to fill it up just that quick. And so we started making plans, and time passed, and one by one people started falling off. And then, of course, in July, the hostilities began again. And it just, and so Arjuna said, well, gosh, we've been taking people to the Holy Land from Italy and having a great time. I'm sure we can get another handful of people. And so what it ended up being was about 23 of us, 10 from the United States and 13 from Europe. And it was wild. It was actually good that it wasn't much larger. The bus could have held more, the facilities could have held more, but the spaces we went were very intimate. We were accustomed to the scope of Italy and the grandeur, and all of the Christian works over there have got this very large scope. The churches are enormous, the piazzas are big, the cities are big. There's this whole breadth of, and so we had 50 people go to Italy, and it was just fine. It worked seamlessly. It was brilliant. But for this, we had the 23, and everything in the Holy Land is tiny. It's 1/6 the size of the United States. I'm sorry, 1/6 the size of Oregon. It's just tiny, yeah. It's just the size of New Jersey for those who are East Coasters. And everything's kind of, and a lot of it's desert, so there's not a lot happening in vast tracts of it. And the cities, the towns, as our guide said, it was cute. It was a really fun, and this satsang tonight is going to be much like the trip, which was we had a general outline and then life filled in the gaps. So tonight's just going to be kind of a free-form sharing. But as our guide said, he said, in Israel, the mountains are not mountains, because the highest mountains are like 2,500 feet. The mountains are not mountains. The seas are not seas. The Sea of Galilee is smaller than Lake Tahoe. And he said, and then he said, let's hope the bus drivers are drivers. and they, in fact, were. But the cities, the shrines, they're small, they're intimate. Most of it is at a scale that's just very personal. And so 25, 30 people is a lot to try and gather together and keep the energy together.
But we took all of you with us. One thing that on the altar, you can come up later, all the pictures that anyone gave us, we had in a pouch, and we brought with us to all the sacred places. Towards the end of the trip, we were in Jerusalem, and there we visited the Holy Sepulchre, and there's a spot where Jesus' body was anointed. And so we took the pictures and placed them there. We just brought you all with us. So if you gave us a picture too, it should be up here. You're welcome to take it back if you'd like at the end of the night and take it with you, because it's been blessed. It's been to the Holy Land.
So it was very international, as we said at World Brotherhood Day. It was a very international trip. We had, I think, probably about 7, 8 countries listed that were present. Our tour guide was Hebrew. He was an Israeli man. but he was only licensed to give tours in Italian. So, so we had we had a lot of translating going on back and forth and back and forth.
Somebody said that was a really good thing because it made you pause and reflect on what was being said, because everything was said in 2 languages. So if it was said first in English, it was translated then in Italian, or vice versa, depending on who was speaking. So there were these pauses after these sentences. So I, for myself, found that I could just, you know how we do Hatha Yoga and we pause between, the poses? I felt like I could pause and listen to, well, Christ walked here. Christ performed this miracle here. So it was very special that way.
So we had a lot of music. We were fortunate. We had Dambara and David Eby and Cindy. Hi, Manisha. Cindy, who kind of heads up the music in Seattle, and then Uma and Shivani from Italy. So there was quite a musical group. So everywhere we went, there was singing at a very lovely level. And Shivani, little secret, a lot of Ananda leaders around the world are Jewish. They are just completed Jews. The Messiah for them has come, whereas, but she went back and she dug into her Jewish roots. And one of the first things we did when everybody got together was to sing this chant. So we invite you to join us as we start the pilgrimage this evening.
So Shivani introduced us to this. Anybody Jewish or know Hebrew or Hebrew chants or anything like that here? Good.
That's right.
Okay.
David, welcome.
So this is the words are, come on up, Madhavi, David. Hevanu Shalom Alechem. And you got to, for the Alechem, you got to, okay? So it's Alechem. So it means, and peace be with us. Hevenu Shalom Alechem. Alechem. So it goes, Hevenu Shalom Alechem. Hevenu Shalom Alechem. Hevenu Shalom Alechem. Avenu Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Alechem. Avenu Shalom Alechem. Avenu Shalom Alechem. Avenu Shalom Alechem. Avenu Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Alechem. Okay, now stand up. Feel free to dance around the room in a hora or whatever you want to do, but so Havenu Shalom Alechem. Let's do that once. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Okay. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Avenu Shalom Alechem. Avenu Shalom Alechem. Avenu Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Alechem. Avenu Shalom Alechem. Avenu Shalom Alechem. Avenu Shalom Alechem. Avenu Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Alechem. Okay, stay standing because the other chant we're going to do now is Shalom Haverim, Shalom Haverim, Shalom Shalom, shalom. Lahitraot, lahitraot. Shalom, shalom. So that means peace, friends, until we meet again. Shalom haverim. It's another one of those. Okay? Shalom haverim. Shalom, shalom. Lahitraot, lahitraot. So it's L''Hitraot. Lahitraot, lahitraot. So shalom haverim, shalom haverim, shalom, shalom. Lahitraot, lahitraot, shalom, shalom. Let's go higher. Shalom haverim, shalom haverim, shalom, shalom. Lahitraot, lahitraot, shalom, shalom. Shalom haverim, shalom haverim, shalom, shalom. Lahitraot, lahitraot, shalom, shalom. Shalom haverim, shalom haverim, shalom, shalom. Lahitraot, lahitraot, shalom, 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 shalom. All right, thanks everyone.
So the only rules that we have this evening for the sharing is you have to use the microphone. And because you have a daughter to put to bed early, we thought maybe we would start with you. At some point, we have about a 25-minute slideshow. And what we could do is we could go ahead and start the slideshow and do the talking through the slideshow, just start it up, stop it, etc. Or we can just start telling stories and do the slideshow later. So do you guys have any thoughts on what you'd like to do? Okay. Do you want to say anything first? Does anybody?
I just wanted to say that the pilgrimage was sponsored in part by Brian Homeopathy and doTERRA
Yes.
Oils.
Yes, thank you, Shane. Yes.
This is our nurse speaking.
I think
Yes.
David and I probably took the most selfies on this pilgrimage, I have to admit. But I just wanted to get that in there. I don't have a preference. We could watch or talk.
We can talk during the slideshow.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and start it then?
Va bene.
More than not.
It is, and then.
And we'll do it backwards tonight?
No, no. And he also.
Inside out.
So the different places, we made a movie, so, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So just keep that mic available for.
Oh, I don't know what I want to do.
Sit down, Greg.
Can you see
How about if we just do this?
And do I need to do anything to this?
Oh. I'm live. Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so, Pilgrims, you'll have to just tell us when you want me to stop.
Okay.
Because it's kind of in a movie format. Yeah. So we're going to start at Tel Aviv. I think it's the largest city in Israel. Yes,
Yes.
I think it is. My memory is that it's 2 million people with the surrounding. Jerusalem is like 500,000. There's one other large city. Anybody remember what that the other city?
Yeah, don't forget that Israel is about the size of New Jersey. It's very small.
And this is Tel Aviv is a lot like if you put Portland on a warm sea, you'd have Tel Aviv. Yeah, but there's a port north of there that's more active, I think. Pardon? Keep it going. Keep your cursor down. Okay. That is Benny and Osnat, and they are Kriabans, young Kriabans there, and they are probably the center leaders of the first Israeli Ananda Center. And they were our hosts as we kind of got landed there.
And
Okay.
Osnat is actually writing the Hebrew subtitles for Finding Happiness.
The port is 10,000 years old, they say. So we're going to stop at a little house where Peter brought somebody back, Tabitha, back from the dead, and he had a vision where all the Jewish proscriptions about foods and about life were basically washed away, and it was the moment when he realized that Jesus came not just for the Jews, but for the Gentiles, for the rest of mankind, which is why it spread, because otherwise it was just a Jewish sect up until that point. So there's the house.
So for us, this is where the first miracle happened. We arrived at 4:45 in the morning and graciously went out to breakfast, and then we had to wait until 1 o'clock in the afternoon to check in. So we found these lounge chairs to hang out on. You could pick a better place to to rest and relax. It was delightful. And at one point, Madhavi says, "Arjuna!" And it turns out that Shivani and Arjuna were there looking for us, and they had been walking up and down the rows of chairs looking for the woman with the tattoo. And they had finally given up and parked themselves right next to us. So that was the first miracle.
It was.
It was 70s, yeah.
We went swimming in the water. It was so nice. Yes.
So David actually ends up with the first and last miracles of the trip. David and Madhavi end up with this one, and then the last miracle of the trip was we were walking out of the hotel in Jerusalem. We checked out, and we were walking out the door, literally, to not come back. And as we're walking out, he says, "Wait, listen to the music. That's Pink Martini. That's me playing cello."
Wait, stop.
Stop.
So, the food, unreal. It's so good. I mean, everywhere we went, you could eat something. And David and I, and of course, I think Gangamata and David did the same. We really opted for going Mediterranean. And so, fresh, they'd make these wonderful little omelets really fast, really quick. They'd serve these wonderful little arrangements of cheeses, all kinds of stuff. You know, oh my gosh, we just...
I'm going to back it up.
Yeah, there's some cheese, and then they, the hummus, and they'd put some tahini, and so you couldn't go wrong. Chopped salad, very common, and we would eat this for breakfast, lunch, and dinner pretty much every day. Yes, there are a wide variety, just like in France, there's a wide variety of goat and cow milk cheeses, and hard, soft, it's just unreal, unreal.
They were really good. They weren't salty like you find, feta cheese here and a lot of the cheeses. They just were really, I don't know, they were great. And then lots of olives, and fresh is really the,
Yeah.
So the crystal bowl there with all the different.
You got
That's
three cheeses.
basically
You
cheeses,
got,
tahini,
and then
olive.
an olive.
I think that was
an
the
olive.
olive.
Yeah.
maybe olive. It's chopped up tomatoes and cucumber, very common, very, very lightly dressed, really lightly dressed.
Sometimes onion will be in there, and other light things. You'll get some parsley and that type of thing in there often. Very.
You remember what the 3 cheeses were?
Yeah.
There's a cream cheese, there's a feta, and then there's another kind of cheese on the other end. I don't remember what it was. Yeah, yummy. That's what it was. Yeah. This was at Bread and Company. It was our breakfast go-to in Tel Aviv.
This was literally for us like the first breakfast we had,
Bread
David
and
and I
company.
had when we landed.
See, this was promoted as a trip to the sites associated with Jesus, but she thought it was cheeses, and so it ended up being.
Oh, yeah, Stephen.
Stephen, do you want to sit in the? You're okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is Sudarshan and Yashoda from from Omaha. You're looking at it. You're looking at the Ananda in Nebraska. Yeah. They've been on pilgrimage with us before. Yeah. So Cindy and Joanne are from Seattle, and they're the other Americans. So there were 10 Americans. So this is in Nazareth now. So we traveled from Tel Aviv up to Nazareth, or up to Tiberias on the Sea of Galilee, and then we went straight up to Nazareth on the first trip. So this was news to me. There's a lot of the biblical stories I don't know, but apparently when the angel Gabriel came to Mary, he came to her twice. And the first time she was at the well in town gathering water, and he showed up. And she's they figure about a 14-year-old girl. And this angel shows up and says, excuse me, but we have this really impressive project for you. We want you to be the mother, the virgin mother of this avatar. And she kind of did what I think most 14-year-old girls would do. She went, I'm out of here. And she ran home. Okay, and that's where he showed up again. And the very first thing he said there was, be not afraid, which was probably, he could have started there with this, maybe. But anyway, this is a beautiful site. And
So I'm going to add something here. This is the original well for Nazareth. Samuele, who was our guide, wonderful, wonderful man, tons of knowledge. One of the things he said was, you have to realize that this particular town had maybe 30 houses total in it. So 30 houses, and she was one family. Joseph, her betrothed, was another family. And that's the other part of this wonderful story with her running, going like, no way, and then running, hightailing it down the street, was that she was already betrothed to Joseph at this point. So this temple was very sweet. It was just, it had one thing that I noticed about Mary for me personally was this overwhelming sweetness. Not acceptance, not fear, but sweetness.
But it's still active.
There's water that trickles
That's actually from another church. That's from Dominus Flevit. It's tear-shaped because it's the site in Jerusalem. It's just a beautiful.
No, this is Mary's. This
Oh,
is
this is from
Mary's
Mary?
house.
Oh,
Yeah, we're
okay,
still
this
in
is from-
Nazareth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the church dedicated to Mary. It's where her house is, and outside you saw the guy holding the statue. What's really fun about that is that the hands, the white is wearing off, because so many people grab her hands and and bow and pray. Right there, you saw that gentleman standing there. What's very interesting about this church is that there are all these mosaics, all devoted to Mary, from different countries all over the world. So you see a different representation of Mary from each country, how they see Mary. Very beautiful, very beautiful. Is this Franciscan? Is this one Franciscan?
I don't know that it's Franciscan, but a major influence for Christianity in Israel is the Franciscan order.
Yeah, there's basically two. There's the Greek Orthodox and then the Franciscans, who pretty much run everything. The well was Greek Orthodox.
This is another shrine.
This is fresh squeezed pomegranate juice that we saw everywhere, and it was yummy. And that's all it is, nothing added. Just slice them up in half and squeeze them out. And you can buy these presses to use at home. And you can mix orange juice or other things with it, but most people just take it straight, and it's good.
This is kind of like a street side vendor
Yeah.
or something like that.
Totally, yeah.
So how much would like a cup of that go for as far as the price that they would sell?
10, anywhere from 10 to 20 shekels.
Which
And
is about
Translate to
4 times that, so it's about $1. It's about
It's
75 cents.
38 shekels per dollar. 3.8 shekels per dollar.
3.8.
3.8 shekels per dollar. So
Yeah.
10 shekels would be $3.
No.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway. It struck me as cheaper than that.
Pardon?
It struck me as cheaper than that.
Yeah, it was. I think that's about what it was.
I've got a large pomegranate.
They were really good. I know we're talking about food.
Okay, so 10 to 15 shekels, depending on how big a glass you got.
I got the big one.
There's about 4 shekels to each dollar.
3.8. The big ones were probably about 12, 14 ounces.
Maybe that's why he's smiling so much there. Okay.
You saw these vendors all over the country. Wherever you went, there they were. And this is just a street scene from Nazareth. It's just, this is the path that she ran. Of course, it didn't look like this then, but this is the path that she ran as she was.
But we could.
There you all are. And where everybody is bowing is the grotto where the angel appeared to Mary in her home.
Yeah.
Dunbar and David, anytime you want to sing, just stop us and sing away. And so that is the grotto. One of the things I didn't realize was that Joseph was of a wealthy family. And that one of the ways you could tell it was that they had a ritual bath in their home. And having a ritual bath, most people, it was a major part of it. They were tied in with the Essenes. Apparently, they were part of the Essene larger community. They weren't part of the monastic order, but they were like, lay order or community living. And because we'll go to Qumran later, and that was a monastic community, but this is household community. But ritual bathing was a major part of what they did. And there were the common baths, but if you were wealthy, you had your own bath. But it was a major thing because you had to have a cistern and water storage, and the water has to be fresh, and it's a desert area, and so it's a major detail. The other was there were storage caverns underneath, and again, it was a sign of wealth to have that kind of pantry type of thing. So he's almost like Rajasi. To Master's story, Rajasi doesn't show up a whole lot, but he made it possible. Joseph doesn't show up a whole lot, but apparently he was kind of the spine that made possible the story of Jesus' life.
Is the old city below ground level?
Yeah, we're up at ground level now, and we're walking back, and this is excavations down into the old city.
They use a lot of cave structure. So there's tons of caves and grottos. David was joking with me. He was like, so what cave were you born in? Because I think you don't realize that, you think of all these houses and huts, but it's the desert. There isn't really a whole lot of wood, and you had to be really wealthy to get wood to build a house with. So they built houses like huts with straw and mud and such. But Joseph's family had a huge underground cavern, and they actually stored their animals under there at night. That's where they would bed their animals every night. So very interesting, very different. I like Diva, I was just like floored by this because I was like, it didn't even occur to me that this would be possible. I'm so used to seeing the Catholicized version of Jesus' birth, which is the cute little, shack. And anyway, so this was just
We're
very
remembering this when we get to Bethlehem because it's a similar model. The inn was over the caves down below where the animals were, and that's where the manger was. And they brought the animals in through the side down into the caverns underneath the home. We ate at Christmas Hotel twice. So this is we went up to Mount Carmel, and this is the Baha'i Gardens. The Baha'i Gardens that are at Mount Carmel. Yeah, this is what we saw. We didn't go visit them, but they're beautiful. They're very classic. Yeah.
What's that tall building up there at the top of the hill?
Probably a hospital or a part of the university or something there. Yeah.
Pardon?
No, but it's got Mideastern roots. Yeah. Yeah, remember that the the Holy Land, this small little area, 1/6 the size of Oregon, and in fact it gets down to 1 square kilometer, is the most sacred place for the Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians all at the same time. And there's more going on in the Holy Land in terms of sacred story than any other square, inch on the planet in many ways. India has areas that are very sacred and dense this way, but there's just been a lot for thousands of years going on here spiritually. Does anybody want to say anything about this? Yes.
In this case, in this spelling, it's really confusing. In this case, Elisha was John the Baptist, and Elias, am I getting that right? Elias.
Elijah and Elisha. So Elisha was Jesus, and Elijah was John the Baptist.
Thank you. Thank you. That's actually correct. So I don't know why it said.
This is John the Baptist in a previous incarnation. This is John the Baptist in a previous incarnation. And this is where they switched roles later, but
Yeah, this was the grotto that John, I guess as Elijah, hid out for like 40 years. He was, this was around the time when he was very mad, was it Herod? He was very mad with the king for remarrying. I mean, one of these things.
Wrong century.
Well, anyway, but this is where he hung out for 40 years.
Okay, so who here has heard of Jezebel? Have you heard of Jezebel? Okay, so Jezebel brings in Baal, the god Baal, and they start worshiping him with King Ahab. Remember that story? And they have this contest of the two things, and they slaughter the oxen and they pour water on it, and they have this contest. Okay, whichever god can light the sacrifice on fire wins. And of course, Elijah wins, and so then they're not very happy with him, and so he had to run away, and he hid in this cave, and it was a very strong difference to the sweetness of Mary. So it was like Divine Mother in the morning, and then we go here, and it was like Heavenly Father, that very much in the spine feeling of that.
I will add that this is the Carmelite headquarters, and what was really, really beautiful was David and Dumbara sang, and it was just exquisite. And then as soon as they were done, the monks started their chanting. I mean, literally, it was like a breath as soon as these guys were done, and then they started their chanting. It was like they almost waited for these guys to sing, and we ran into that a lot. I mean, where it was Dumbara and David and Uma from Assisi and Cindy Gottfried from Seattle did a lot of singing for us. Singing pieces from the oratorio throughout the Holy Land. And it was really very, very deep, and it was very sacred. And what I noticed as I was recording a few pieces was people would just stop and absorb the vibration that these guys were just flowing as they were singing. So it was really very special that way.
Yep,
Yes.
that's
Yeah,
it,
Uma McFarlane, right.
Yeah. So
this
was
is
the hike.
this is Mount Tabor.
Mount Tabor.
Yeah, this is the walk up Mount Tabor.
Mount of Transfiguration.
Transfiguration. I will
about?
add on a light note, up up at Mount Tabor, again, just a really beautiful sight. I was really struck by the I don't know, the vastness, I want to say, but it was just really, this is one of the side altars. There are two side altars. One has kind of a spiritual eye, and again, we were noticing spiritual eye just about everywhere we went. And then there's another altar on the other side that has a dove in the middle, very beautiful. And I think that one with the dove has St. Francis in it. This is a Franciscan monastery. But what was funny is David walked outside after we were about ready to leave, and walked outside, and his cell phone vibrated, and he was, "Ugh," and he was standing by this tree, and he realized that he could get he got free Wi-Fi. We've been paying for Wi-Fi up until this point, so he was really excited. So we were like, "It's a miracle, we've got free Wi-Fi." So we were like, I have this picture of him standing by, and that's the sacred tree of Wi-Fi on Mount Tabor.
No, this is Donnell Page on harp, and
Yes, those are date trees. That's Samuele right there in the yellow.
This was at our hotel in Tiberias. So this is where we meditated in the mornings when we got up. It's right there on the Sea of Galilee, where so much of Jesus' mission was, all along this coast right here. And that's the width of the sea.
Is that Jordan on the other side?
That
Isn't that
is
Jordan?
the Golan Heights.
Yeah, the Golan Heights.
What was the name of that hotel that you were staying at?
That was the Gangamata?
Ronith Kinnereth or something like that. Ronnie
She'll look it
Kinnereth.
up, yeah.
I've got it.
But this is in the Great Rift, and there's basically the Sea of Galilee is down below. It's like sea level is up here, and there's this rift that the Sea of Galilee, and then the River Jordan, and then down to the Dead Sea, and the wind just comes howling up this rift, and this can turn really, really, really treacherous just that fast. So the stories, I think it was the first day we were there, the wind was just whipping up the canyon. It was just coming straight up this direction. And there was a tremendous amount of chop and activity. So when you're getting the stories of the guys out fishing and the storm and Jesus walking on the water and him calming the waters and stuff, it's real. You can feel it. You can see when it gets, when the fates take an unfriendly interest, if you will, and there's energy moving through that across the lake, across the sea. It's a real thing. There's a lot of power. There's a lot of power moving across there. It's, the lake is maybe, I want to say maybe 15 miles long, something like that. And the wind coming across it can create so much chop and so much wave in that short distance that it's lethal even now for people even in conventional boats.
But to answer your question about the feeling there, the other feeling is just the sweetness of Jesus'
Yes.
presence there. And we'll talk about this, but just all the stories of Jesus being with the disciples, the sweet interactions between them, to me that was one of the most special parts of the trip, because you just felt it in your heart. It was real, it was present, it was now.
It was friendship. Yeah. It was just the sweetest friendship.
So the name of the hotel is Rimonim Galay Kinnereth Hotel. I'm probably not.
That was you could see that from your room, right there, that view of the sea level.
Many of the rooms had that view,
Many.
but the meditation, that's out on the lawn, just outside, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say something.
Sure.
So for me, it was the ordinariness of it all, because I grew up with all these Bible stories. So here we were on the Sea of Galilee, and what was around it? Fishing villages. And what did the people do? They fished. And what did Jesus do? He walked around and talked to them. I mean, it was such a, I don't feel vibration very easily, but you could really feel it there and also at the Beatitudes.
I kind of went expecting a
We'll see pictures of that.
kind of like a Jesus amusement park. But it's amazing how it's people living their lives and the different, it's just one of the many holy places there. But the Galilee for me was one of the sweetest. And we got to sing Lift Your Hearts there at Capernaum, where Swami had the inspiration to write that. And the sweetness, every time we sang a song at its place of inspiration, it added such a deeper dimension to it that I'm really looking forward to sharing with the choir.
The Church of the Beatitudes is up on this hill, but they feel that it's not the site where he actually gave the talk. It's like they were down by the sea and there were so many people that he came up the hill a little bit so that his voice would carry more fully out to the crowd. But when they went to cite the church to honor that, they placed it up on the top of the hill. So Gangamata and David and Dambara and Madhavi and a handful of others went down to the actual site. So you'll see that here in just a moment. The actual site where he gave the talk, where he,
The actual Beatitudes?
yeah.
Wow.
So it's just, it's like a 10-minute walk or a 15-minute walk.
You know, blessed are the cheesemakers.
So there's the site.
That's the site. Yeah. And see, you can see how close to the Sea of Galilee that it really. This is the Church of the Multiplication. So this is the loaves and fishes.
It's very close to where we just were. We went a little farther down. Again, this is all happening in a very small strip of land along the Sea of Galilee. So they talk about, he was giving a talk, and it got to be too much, and so he takes off on the boat, and they go sailing up the coast, the shore, and they get off. But you can see the whole shore. So the people are watching, and they go, oh, okay, and they followed him up there. And then he gives this talk, and then, people are hungry. It's been a long time, long trek, and so the fishes and the loaves happens. That happened twice. This is the first time, and the second time is on the far side of the lake, around the bend a ways. And it was more for the Gentiles. This was for the Jews.
You'll also notice wherever Jesus was, the spot, there's a rock. There's always a rock. And you'll see, yes, there's an exposed rock and generally an altar over it of some sort.
Are you allowed to touch?
Yes, yeah, we hands on everywhere we could.
So, and again, very close to that. This is the Church of the Primacy of Peter. Does anybody want to tell that story? Yeah, the rock.
So this is where, after he was crucified, when Simon Peter was not sure what to do, and he decided to go fishing again. And so he takes a few of the disciples, and they go out, and they don't catch anything, but as they're coming in,
Let's set the stage just a little more, because remember that Peter has denied Jesus just before his crucifixion, and he's living with it. And, they're bereft of everything that was of value to them, and they just lost, literally at sea. They don't know what to do with themselves, so they go back to what they've been doing. But he's carrying the heaviness. It said that Jesus was around for about 40 days after the crucifixion, appearing and connecting and making appearances. So there they are with the freshness of what's just happened and their own roles in it, and not knowing what to do with their lives. And they're out, they fish at night, and they're coming back from having fished this night, and they see somebody on the shore.
and of course it's Jesus, and he prepares their breakfast for them. And 3 times he says, "Peter, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord." "Peter, do you love me?" "Peter, do you love me?" And so as to then forgive the 3 denials.
I think what I realized at this spot, we were down on the rocks at this point, and I was thinking very deeply about that, because, I'm not sure, Peter, what an exalted, he walked with Jesus. He was the rock. I mean, Jesus named him the rock, Peter, Pietro. And something I realized was that, I don't think that Jesus was forgiving Peter necessarily for Peter's sake, but for our own, showing us that God forgives no matter what, God loves no matter what. And I was struck very deeply by that. I mean, I was just, what an incredible blessing. Incredible blessing.
And so there's the rock, where he was on the shore, where he was making the breakfast.
Now, the primacy of Peter, was that where Jesus said, "Who do men say I am?" And everybody else had various opinions, and Peter said, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." And he said, "Blessed are you, Peter, because nobody's told you this. You got this by your own intuition. And so therefore, Simon, the son of Jonah, you are Peter, you are the rock, that I'll build, upon which I'll build my church," which has gotten misinterpreted. But that's what I remember about the primacy of Peter, is what that site is. Am I remembering that wrong?
Yeah, and it's right there on the beach.
Okay,
where-
okay. Right. So all in the same area.
Yeah, in the distance from the school to the church here. I mean, it's just... Notice the scope of the church. This is one of the iconic places for Jesus, and the foundation of everything of Christianity. And look at the size of the church. It's very small,
Yeah.
very intimate.
Did you stay there a long time, or was there
Yeah.
a big crowd?
At this one, you could stay. We could have stayed a long time. It was not heavily trafficked. So there's the church. There's the church. There's the beach where. So then we took a boat ride out onto the Sea of Galilee for about an hour or so, and motored out, and then spent some time just in silence out on the sea, and then came back just right around sunset. I'm sure.
So, yeah, I don't, did you see Uma? You saw Uma, and then Arjuna and Shivani there.
There's Anita.
we chanted, "I am the bubble, make me the sea."
They wouldn't let us swim,
David wanted to get in every body of water that we were at. This is, all right. I will admit that we snuck in here because we couldn't figure out how to get in legally. But this is the boat. They say that it was, but it was underground in the sand, right, David, for like 2,000 years.
It's not the boat.
Well, I think it's, we're not sure.
It's the boat.
It's the boat.
But it gives you an idea. This is a boat that gives you an idea of the kind of boat and the size of boat that they were fishing from.
So Jesus.
And this is the real thing. And that's what it would look like complete. Mhm. Very small. Very small. About 25 feet, maybe 20 feet. It was not big. Yeah. Do people remember the story of Zacchaeus? Jesus is coming through, this is Jericho, and the crowds are all around him, and this small man is he a tax collector?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
he's a tax collector. He wants to see him, and he climbs a tree, and Jesus looks up, and he doesn't know him. You know, they've never been introduced. They've never seen each other, and he looks up and says, Zacchaeus, come down here. I'll have dinner at your house tonight. So this is the sycamore tree in which he was up in.
And that's, again, pointing out that he was a tax collector, and Jesus, basically, the people that were following him were a lot of tax collectors and, you know, people with reputations that weren't necessarily very clean. But again, I think Jesus was trying to show people, because the Jews, you know, they were very much into cleanliness. So you don't touch people that are not clean, or you have to clean yourself. So they don't associate with unclean people. Hence, tax collectors are unclean people. But Jesus did, over and over and over again, trying to show people that, yes, lepers, tax collectors.
He said the doctor doesn't come but to those that are sick and ailing, those that need help.
So the biologist in me wants to say a 2,000-year-old sycamore tree. So did they replant it, or were they claiming that this was the sycamore tree?
I think they were claiming it was a relative.
And by the way, if you ever go to the Middle East and they offer you sycamore nuts, they are sugar-coated peanuts, basically. So there is no such thing as a sycamore nut, but they will gladly sell you them for 5 shekels.
Yes.
This is outside of Jericho, and I took the pictures because I wanted to give a feeling for what it's like there right now. We're driving between 2 minefields.
Really?
Yeah, and that's what the fences are, is to keep people out of the minefields, and we're driving toward the River Jordan. That's what that yellow sign says.
Jericho, you know, you get out of these cities where all these things are happening into the desert, and that's what you see. You realize this is desert. There's just a whole lot of nothing there. So, you know, it really gives you a feel for traveling in the desert by foot, you know, for a long time. That's just what it's like. It's a real rough life there. And you can see why oasis and caves and villages are just real special in the midst of all that.
River Jordan straight ahead, Sea of Galilee, wells, oases, you know, various things like that is where the water came from. Yes. Yeah, Dead Sea is not, Galilee is. Galilee is fresh water.
They do get, what is it, 75% by desalinating
Now.
the Mediterranean.
Yeah, they're working on a process of desalinization of the Mediterranean water, and they're hoping to be at 100% like within the next 5 years. But they've built a dam on the Sea of Galilee, so that and that's where they get a significant amount of water from right now because it is fresh water. And there are springs. There's springs and whatnot that do feed a lot of these things. Like, for instance, when you see Qumran, I think there was he said there was 7 different springs in Qumran. And this is, trust me, Qumran is the desert. I would not go there, I'm sorry. But that's desert, but they still have springs that come in, so.
So is there a rainy season? Because it looks like there's shrubs and stuff. I mean, does this green up for 6
2
months
months.
out of the year?
2 months. And they may get 2 or 3 inches.
Now, you said that.
Just a second, Chris. Pardon?
Very close.
Close to the desert where Jesus spent his 40 days.
Yes. Yes. Go ahead, Chris.
I was gonna say, you said that sign says minefield. I mean, when you were driving down those isolated roads like that, can you feel like military tension, political tension, or like?
Well, we're going to see some things. This is in Palestinian Authority land. So Jericho and this whole area is under the Palestinian Authority. Okay, so we're out of Israel at this point. Although you see Israeli military presence protecting. So this is now at the river Jordan. And that's Jordan over there.
So literally, if you drew a line down the middle of the river, the other side of it is Jordan.
That's Jordan.
Yeah. You
And that's-
cannot go over the middle of the river. You can't do that.
And see the woman sitting on the steps? Look up slightly to the left
You
of
can
her.
see the camo legs.
That's a military presence with a machine gun.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on the other side.
This was really sweet. We had a purification
And that's how wide it is.
and baptism, if you will, at the river, which was really very, very sweet. I think every one of us really enjoyed it quite deeply.
They were doing baptisms there at the River Jordan?
We did. We did a purification and baptism. So, the Glazards, Diva and Gangamata and Shivani and Arjuna, both, they both did the blessings. So they did the purification piece, and then they took some water from Jordan and blessed us on our heads with it.
But you will see whole groups of people there, and they will be all dressed in white. And that's one of the things that I found the most special and unexpected about being in the Holy Land was just all the big groups from all the different countries. Just Africa, China, Japan, Korea, U.S., everywhere. And they were all there for the common reason of just loving God, loving Jesus, and celebrating all the different sites.
There were large groups, and one of the most precious things for Dunbar was seeing all the large groups from people all over the world coming to just feel the presence of Jesus. So, and you saw it here. There were people who came as groups in white to do full immersion baptism.
To set yourself up out of disciples?
We didn't. So this is Qumran, and this is where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, and this is the actual monastery.
So the Essene is a group of men only, and they're monks. And what you'll notice is when you're looking up into the hills, there are these little caves. And Samuele and I were, I was pointing, we were laughing a little bit, and he was showing us the cave where they found a lot of the Dead Sea Scrolls. But what was interesting, what he said to me was, the older you are, the closer to the village you get to stay. They sleep up in the caves. So the young people have to walk all the way down and up to get to their caves. So the caves that are located close to the village are for the elder population. Like that.
That's the cave where they found the scrolls.
And they're way up high. So they have to have rope ladders to get up to them. Really.
Did you hear that?
Lowest place on earth.
That was where we stayed,
In
in
Jericho.
Jericho. This is outside of Jericho now, the Mount of Temptation
Right here.
coming.
So you had to take a cable car up to the site.
The temptation site is up high on a hill. The temptation, where Jesus,
Where Satan
the
tempted
temptation, where Satan.
Jesus.
So what we're doing is we're taking the cable car because that's what you do, and you can see, and it stops right in the middle, on purpose. There's a little sign that says, "This car is going to stop halfway so you can see the view." But everybody, of course, is.
So just recall that when Jesus went into the wilderness for 40 days before his mission began, this is where. So he went into the wilderness and stayed in a cave, way, way up there. And when, maybe we'll have a picture of it, but when you picture Satan tempting him and saying, well, why not just throw yourself off this cliff and God will save you? It's way down there, way, way, way. Yeah. So it really brings it home.
Is this the same place where there's the monastery and the monks are living up in the caves, or is this a different?
There's quite a few of those kind of monasteries, but there is an active monastery. This is Greek Orthodox too, isn't this one the Temptation?
Temptation is Greek Orthodox. So is Saint Giorgio.
Yes.
So yeah, these are Greek
Which
Orthodox.
you'll see next.
So when Jesus went there, it wasn't that he went to an
Cave.
Essene as a retreat or anything, and
No.
he actually was out in the middle of nowhere.
Was Jesus when Jesus went out for 40 days? Was
I
it
think one
at
of
an
the
Essene
things with the
community or someplace
Essene
associated?
is
He
to
was just
realize
out
that
in nowhere,
Mary
out
and
in the desert.
Joseph's families were part of the Essene communities. So that tradition, has come through to Jesus from them.
Could have been a retreat. Possible.
But nothing formalized. These, this structure was built later.
And this is what you saw parked on the cliff.
That was a monastery.
Yes. This is what the cable car took us up
It
to.
is now.
And we still had to walk up to get to the actual location. Diva and Arjuna were vying to see if they could get, if you could rent a room here. It was really very sweet, believe it or not. I mean, the view, of course, was spectacular, but there was a sweetness about it. This is the location where the actual, again, the rock, where
Jesus was
Where
tempted
Jesus-
of the devil.
was tempted by the devil.
So when you say you could rent a room there, what?
No, you couldn't. We were asking, but you can't rent a room there.
Okay.
We started to sing there, and it was we were hushed up immediately. No singing, no singing, no singing. Well, a large Greek Orthodox group came behind us, and they sang for probably a half an hour. So,
That's right.
you know.
So we got our turn after that. That's a good picture. You can see the cliffside there. And the scaffolding.
This is even farther out in the desert now, and this is a Greek Orthodox monastery. There's only about 4 or 5 monks who live there now, but it's way out there. Patiently.
So we're on the other side of the ravine looking across at the San Giorgio.
Now we're going into Jerusalem. Military checkpoint. If you look to the left, you can see the gold. If you look to the left, you can see the Dome of the Rock, the Golden Dome, and this is the hotel we were staying in. Yeah. This is the Church of the Ascension, when Jesus, after the 40 days after his crucifixion, where he finally ascended up to the heavens. They say this is the spot. It is a mosque. A mosque. But they allow the heathen in, the Christians in.
It's not active anymore, but yes, they allow Christians in because they realize the importance of it.
They say that's the place where his footprint is from where he ascended. This is the site. The disciples said, we don't even know how to pray. So this is where he gave the Lord's Prayer.
Again, what's really beautiful about this particular church is that all of these panels are the Our Father in different languages. So they have Esperanto there. If anybody knows Joe Campbell, you know how much he loves Esperanto. But all different religions. And Samuele, we had him recite the Our Father in Hebrew for us. And also he did it in the Aramaic as well, which was a lot of fun. There's Croatian.
Yay.
Yay.
They also had Cree and Cherokee and Fijian and some others that I didn't know how to pronounce.
Do you remember how many there were? There were just over 100. Okay, yeah.
They also had Braille.
Over 100,
Interestingly enough, like
different
French
languages, the
Braille
Our Father,
and
the
Spanish Braille,
Lord's
and it
Prayer.
was very interesting.
Samuel, our guide, he read it in Hebrew and Aramaic, the old language of the time. So,
And
and
what-
This is Gangamata with Croatian, which is where she's from. Her
And what
family's from.
Samuele told us was that the Jews actually recite the Our Father at funerals. They still do to this day.
Again, look at the size of the church. It's not large.
Daiva taught our tour guide meditation, and he saw the spiritual eye.
Yeah.
Meditation.
You should tell the story. Yes, that was a camel. This is Gethsemane. No, sorry, Dominus Flavit. This is the temple that Diva was talking about.
This is the temple where Jesus wept for Jerusalem. And the dome itself is in the shape of a teardrop.
What's really sweet is on the altar there's this little mosaic of a chicken gathering its chicks, which was really sweet actually. Wasn't that an Italian architect who did that?
So we did healing prayers here
Well, we were saying goodbye to Alessandro.
and saying goodbye to Alessandro.
We were really a happy group.
Yes, we were.
They say that these trees in the Garden of Gethsemane, the rootstock is over 2,500 years old, and that the tree boles above are
Granddaughters.
about 1,700 years old. So that's part of the garden. The whole hillside was covered in olive trees and orchards.
This is Franciscan. You'll see the four, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John right there on the front. Yes. So many nations got together and donated money to build this church. So each little roundette right there that you see is dedicated to the country that donated the money. So they're kind of special, customized to that nation.
It's where Jesus prayed, "Lord, let this cup pass from me."
And that's where I realized I had it all wrong. Because here I thought, walking into that place where he offered, "Please take this cup from me," and I thought it was going to be just heavy and dark. But the energy there was so free and uplifted. It was remarkably different than I would have ever imagined.
Same thing throughout the trip, but at the place where he was crucified, I expected to feel some kind of heaviness, and all there was this expansive joy, just this radiant sense of blessing going out. It was remarkable. This is the Greek Orthodox, this is the church. It said that Mary, when she passed, she went to sleep and then ascended. This is the place of sleep. And then this is the grotto where, so they went over to pray, and then they came back into the grotto where they were all staying, and this is where the betrayal happened. This is looking across the valley from the Garden of Gethsemane to the walled city of Jerusalem where Jesus left. That's where the temple was. That's where all the action was. They left to come across that little valley into the garden, into the Mount of Olives in the Garden of Gethsemane every night because they knew that if they were, stayed in the walled city, they were heavy targets. So they would come and they would rest in the garden on this orcharded hillside. And then they would go back during the day when the gates were open for the city. So that's what you're seeing is what it would have looked like 2,000 years ago, looking from that garden across that little valley.
We got to go to the Wailing Wall, which you'll see here in just a minute.
Samueli is Jewish, and I was asking him about the Wailing Wall, and he says, we don't call it the Wailing Wall, because I was saying, well, what's with the wailing part, And he says, we call it the wall or the West Wall. He said, the wailing bit is a tourist thing. But it was, again, it's one of those things you hear about. I think one of the things that for me that was so remarkable is, like Anita, hearing all these stories as you grow up about Jesus and all, and great stories, but you get there and you're like, wow, oh my God, he walked here, oh my God, he ate here, oh my God. And I have to say, Samueli mentioned that Jesus did 3 types of miracles. He did resurrections, raised the dead, he healed the sick and lame, and he worked with food and wine. Right? Food and wine? Yeah. The wall is one of a few places that they still segregate. So there's about 70 meters of the wall, and then this temple, this special temple at the end, where all the men go. And then on the other side of a divide is a smaller section where the women can be. You can see the wall right there at the lower right of the screen. Asnat said she's never seen white doves in Israel except for a few specific locations. The wall was one and the River Jordan was another.
And they take all the prayers. Every month they take the prayers and they put them all in a box and they bring them to a synagogue, a temple.
To the Holy Sepulchre.
To the Holy Sepulchre, and they don't ever throw them away because they're sacred.
They can't burn them either because they're considered sacred texts by this point. You can actually fax a prayer to the wall and somebody will print it out and put it in for you. So if you ever, if you're desperate for a prayer someday, you fax it to the wall and they'll take care of it for you. But it becomes part of the record. Interestingly enough.
24 hours a day. They feel that this is the center of creation. 24 hours a day, there is always somebody praying there. Always. And now, where we are now in this picture is above the public Garden of Gethsemane, the Franciscans have a monastery that they hold in silence. And it's got more of the grove up there and gardens. And we were invited to go there and meditate at night. So this is a midnight meditation that a group of us had in the Garden of Gethsemane. And this is what it looks like looking out at the temple across that valley.
Two people, actually 2 Kriabans, Patrizia and Ricardo, from they are friends of Assisi. Shivani communicated with them and got our invitation into this. And we were a little worried because, again, you know, with the tension and whatnot happening, it's not really safe to be in or near Jerusalem for tourists at night. But when we got there, David and I were just floored. It was so beautiful on every level. It was so light, expansive. Walking through the gardens, Patrizia was walking us through, and the monk that we met, the friar, just full of light, full of light. And he was kind of, you know, vetting us out a little bit because he was trying to remind us that this is a silent monastery, and, you know, we need to honor that. And we were very, you know, we were just the gratitude, you could feel the gratitude flowing back and forth, I think, between him and us. And it was so beautiful. It was such a beautiful evening.
This is going to the tomb of David, walking through the streets of Old Jerusalem, going to the tomb of David, and right above that is the hall where they had the Last Supper. This is the palace of Caiaphas where Jesus was hauled. You're looking across. If you look out to the left, there's the Garden of Gethsemane. And if you look straight to the left, you would see the temple. So this is the circle where it's all played out.
So you're inside the walls?
Yes, we're near the walls. And this is the place where Jesus was held that night. That actually is look straight across at the cemeteries. Look to the left, and where the trees are, that's the Garden of Gethsemane.
So over here are the churches, but this is where we meditated in the private gardens above, right here. That's where the little grotto is. But down here behind the wall, which you can't see, is the church.
And where is the Garden of Gethsemane?
It's here.
That whole area is the Mount of Olives, and the garden is right there. Yeah.
And all that big expanse in the middle is cemeteries, because people of Arabs and Jewish people alike very, very, very much want to be buried near Jerusalem.
What really struck me was that he had the Last
Microphone,
Supper
please.
here.
Microphone.
He had the Last Supper here, walked all the way across to Gethsemane. They then bring him again to Caiaphas's palace, which is right here, spent the night. Then they take him to Pilate's, and in Luke they say they took him to Herod's palace, which is another part of the Jerusalem. And then he's crucified. And this is all within, how many hours? 16 hours. So it was quite a lot of walking. And
There are some steps at Caiaphas that are the original steps that Jesus walked up from Gethsemane.
So now we're beginning to get into the Via Dolorosa, the last moments. And this is where he's scourged. Actually, no, this is where he's held by Caiaphas. I apologize. And this is actually the cave, the dungeons underneath. You start to see what the dungeons must have been like, because they were just caverns underneath.
Our bus driver was a young man, and he always had a plant in a bottle on his front dashboard, and that was basil, actually. Oh, Star and Bucks. This was in Bethlehem, actually.
This is in Palestine, okay? So.
And notice the logo. So the Church of the Nativity, what's interesting about this is 3 different religions own parts of this. Where the actual Nativity is Greek Orthodox. There's an Armenian part, and then the Church of St. Catherine is the Catholics.
So we've left Jerusalem.
We've left Jerusalem. We are now in Bethlehem.
We stepped out for a day.
For a day. This is
Yes.
This is going down, at this point, we could not take anybody with us who had an Israeli passport. So us, Nod and Benny, our guide could not go, Samueli, because they could go in, but they might not be able to get back out.
It's Palestine.
Because it's Palestine. This is Palestinian territory now.
Palestinians and Jews kill each other over there.
Yes.
Yeah. The day we were on the plane.
There was a picture of our Palestinian. There's our Palestinian guide in the brown coat.
Anybody want to say, Young Ahmad, or anybody want to say anything about the Shepherd's Fields?
Shepherd's Field was awesome. We had just come out of being with hordes of people. You crawl down into the cave where Jesus was born and where the manger was laid, and then you're quickly ushered out. We managed to stay there and meditate, but it's basically you're standing in line for an hour to get down there, and then quickly you're ushered away. A little bit, yeah. And then we were able to come to the Shepherd's Field, which was just gloriously open and Franciscan. Yes, and the other place was the Greek Orthodox. Anybody?
It was, it's a little hard to sort through all the crowds and all the conflicting Kali Yuga versus Dwapara. This is St. George, who was born in Palestine.
That was St. George and the Dragon.
Yeah. So, you do your best to tune in as you're being ushered through real fast. I think it was easier for us as yogis to just be in places, first of all, that were Franciscan, because they had a positive, welcoming vibe, and just spend time and feel the sweetness, like Shepherd's Field. And, we were able to tune in better in places like that. So we felt it everywhere, but it was more difficult where the crowds were.
Some people said that they had a very deep experience down by the manger and down in that grotto. It's the one place in the entire trip that I didn't get below the surface personally. I did on the far side. The grotto's walled off by a human-made wall, and on one side is the Greek Orthodox, and that's where the Nativity and the manger were. On the far side, basically it would have just been open. It would have been just part of the same cavern. It's Franciscan, and you can go in there, and I could feel much more there. Master said when he was there, he was absolutely certain that that's the place that Jesus was born. He felt it very deeply. And some people on this trip had a very deep experience there in spite of the crowds. It was, for me, the one place I couldn't cut beneath the surface.
The other thing was we couldn't sing there at the Nativity, but we sang at Shepherd's Grotto. And again, the music made so much of this pilgrimage real, if you will. Just the light, the energy, It was so special, and I think that's what was so remarkable, and I think in Shepherd's Field it was expansive. It was, you felt the glory of the shepherds. The water fountain has a shepherd on the top looking towards the Church of the Nativity. I mean, but you can just feel that.
It was open, it was simple, you could feel what it might have been like lying there with your sheep, and the glory of the heavens open up, and the sense of what's going on, the wonder. It was. So, go ahead.
The other thing, and I think Swami or Uma was telling me that even it took Swami a bit to feel down through the 2,000 years layers of stuff, because it's just been one group fighting, and then somebody else would come in and take over. But for me, I felt a bit of vibration the most when I was able to take off my shoes, because then I was really connected, and I talked to Uma about it, and you kind of visualize what it's like 15 or 20 feet down, because that's where that would have been 2,000 years ago. That would have been the street, or that would have been the place. So that's another way of thinking about the vibration.
So now we're in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This is the last few things that played out in his life.
We were able to get up very early, and we got there at about 5:15 in the morning, and we're able to go to the site of the crucifixion, and then meditated, which is upstairs, and then down below is where they laid him out.
Side of the crucifixion. This is the anointing rock. So where they laid Jesus out and anointed him. Did you hear that, Stephen? So this is the site of the crucifixion, right here.
He can't see it that far.
Can you see? No.
He can't reach your lips that far.
Okay. Anyway,
The site of
I think what's most remarkable about this is how empty the Holy Sepulchre was, because we were there at 5 o'clock in the morning. We went back there later on that same day, and you could not get near any of this. So we had this just blessed experience. We think they rub this with frankincense and myrrh, because when you lay down, to get a blessing off of it, you can smell it. It's so beautiful. And of course, everybody, you put your relics, and you put your shawls and your malas down, and we were all just, loading stuff down, and just to get that blessing from that. This, for me, was a very, very strong spot. I really felt the blessing of not just Jesus, but, Mary, the Marys that were there with him, being a mother, realizing, you just took your son down off the cross, so to speak, and just the beauty of that, and what they did and what he gave for everyone was really very strong there.
That's actually, if you, where the cross was, and the rock where the cross was, that's the niche where the cross was placed in the rock is inside that little place. You go in there and there's a star. It's kind of a star there. It's protected, but in the center of the star there's a hole, and you can reach down and actually touch the rock, and where the blood fell, and where just the whole thing. Again, like I said, I went there expecting to feel some amount of contraction or sorrow or grief or anything. And all there was just this, and it's like it resonated with the universe. It resonated with the earth. Just this enormous movement of blessing outward. Very deep and very still. it's hard to see. This is like the Portiuncula. This is the Holy Sepulchre. This was Joseph of Arimathea's sepulchre, and he gave it over because they didn't have any place to put him. And then he was buried in a small and very nondescript grotto real near here. But this is all inside one church. This is all inside one building. It's this enormous building. And this is, it's hard to see it, but where those pillars are on the left and those large candlesticks on the left and right, that really defines the perimeter of the sepulchre in there. It's a very small space. So what you just saw was chronological for our trip, but not chronological in his life. That's the culmination of the Via Dolorosa. We saw it early in the morning because we knew we couldn't have access to it later. It would have been just too packed. Then we went back and we did the entire journey. Starts just outside the walls in Bethsaida. There were healing pools there. It's where Mary grew up, or was born?
Mm-hmm.
Was
Yeah.
born and then grew up in Nazareth.
That statue was her and her mother, Hannah. One of the things that we did for walking the Stations of the Cross was we remained in silence and just really tried to tune in very deeply to what was happening at each station. And something I realized was that when you become a new Kriyaban, you do 14 Kriyas, and there's 14 stations. So I thought, oh, that's fascinating. So for me personally, I tried very hard to take a moment, to say a little prayer, say a little blessing, and then to just get really clear with what that particular station was, and then do a really conscious Kriya. And it was amazing how strongly I felt that.
One of the things that, just again to give a feeling more for it, Jesus didn't carry the cross. He carried the bar of the cross because they had the vertical stationary and implanted, and they would attach them and then hoist them up for the crucifixion. So, but try and feel carrying this enormous bar, being forced to carry this enormous piece of wood all through these narrow streets and up, and it's very uphill the whole way.
Yeah. So pretty much by this time, the whole European section of our group has taken off back to Tel Aviv to fly back out. And the Daiva Gangamata and David and I were, left. And we decided that we wanted to go do a little bit of sightseeing and stuff. And Gangamata heard about this fabulous outdoor market. And you know me, I'm like, yay, outdoor market. So we went down and we got on a train. And this is where Daiva was saying, we're like looking at this thing and it's all in Hebrew. And we're like, okay. And then this wonderful woman who was an American who's lived in Israel for 43 years, who was just out of the country and just came back. She just beautifully, again, a miracle. She was right there. She showed us what to do. She told us where to go. It was very sweet. And what was funny is, we probably could have walked it quite frankly. As Americans, that wouldn't have been such a big deal, but it was really fun to be on the train and ride down. And this market was 2 parallel streets with a bunch of little side alleys. And what you're looking at is a nut vendor, tea vendors, halva, huge halva vendors. There
Now you know
were
where it came
bread.
from.
Yeah, that's
It
where the
came from that
halva,
market.
the prasad we had came from there.
The halva.
And what's really fun about that is you could see they had these humongous grinders, which I think Diva actually has a picture of.
I didn't.
They had the stone nut grinders, right there, and you could see them grinding down the tahini, and it was for me, this was just like, oh. And really good pomegranate juice. Yeah, that's where we stopped for pomegranate juice. One more for the road, as we say.
So that is the end of the trip.
What is that? What is that?
That's the interior of the hotel that we stayed at.
So, how does that work there? You're paying a certain amount of shekels each day to stay there?
You pay one price for the trip, and everything's included.
Oh,
Except for the
s-
pomegranate juice.
Yeah, there's small things that aren't included, but basically you pay one time and everything is rolled out. That's it.
Great price, great price.
For you, 20 shekels.
So, yeah, maybe it's a good time if anybody has any questions to answer questions or just talk. I mean, that gives a view of, there's.
There we
A few more
are.
pictures.
I'd like to say that on the way to Qumran, the vendors knew we were coming because there was a guy on a burro with a cell phone that let them know.
India and 2, Israel and probably 3.
Yeah, in most of the places, there's always the vendors who are walking around and getting up right close to you and trying to sell you their wares. And, you have to be really mindful, but it's in general, my mom was really, really worried. And I said, I said, I'm going to think about it. But, and literally at one point I thought, why not? Why not?
That was gonna be the question I was gonna ask. Did you guys feel did you feel like any kind of military tension or feel threatened or?
For me personally, it was more the last day that we were there because literally within 12 hours after we left was when the synagogue was attacked. There was, on the way back, we got in, we were on the train and there were police all around the ancient city walls, every gate. That was rare. Honestly, the people are so sweet. They're so caring and giving. If you lost, they give you directions. I mean, I never,
Muslim people, Jewish people,
Yeah, all people.
Palestinians equally.
I never.
At a person-to-person level, there was no sense of tension. But there's so much self-definition around your nationality, around your religion, around so much self-identity, which is what makes Korea and the path of self-realization so poignant. Because there we were, 7, 8, 9 nations, and how many languages, and how many different, there were Jews with us, there were people, just every combination you could think of within our little band, and nobody noticed any difference. There was no sense of separate identity. All there was souls and joy and the richness of the variety of God playing out in all these forms. But there's so much contraction and a need to separate oneself and define themselves by the differences as opposed to appreciating the differences and identifying with the commonalities. So yes.
Did they ever ask you what religion you were?
No, not once. Oh, yes, once.
What Well, we were in Tel Aviv early on, and there was a group of us going to that restaurant, and we were just a little bit lost. And that there was a Hasidic Jewish man who came up along us, and he was giving us directions on where to go, but he started to ask me, well, what are you guys doing? And so I told him, and he was not put off by it. And, well, he smiled, and what did I say? Oh, I said, well, I think I mentioned yoga and meditation. We're here traveling through all of Israel. And then he was so sweet because he said, are you going to go to a synagogue? And I thought that was so sweet of him to ask, are you going to go to a synagogue? It wasn't like, he didn't hold back. His energy, his vibration was so sweet. He wished us a good trip. And I was about to ask him, well, could we go? And then we just got diverted. I think we got to our corner where we turned right, but.
A Greek Orthodox gentleman tried to convert David at the temptation.
Oh, really?
That was about as close as we got
Were you
to any.
were you tempted?
Were you
No.
tempted?
Yeah, that was about as close as we got to any kind of give or take about religion per se.
This area of the world is just so karmically intense, both with love of God and with conflict with neighbors. And I think that's part of the reason that Jesus came there, I think, is just because, these people loved God, but they also were stuck. And he was just trying to help them move along to kind of the next phase of their evolution. And I think that's the same with Yogananda. He came at a time when we're sincere, we love God, and we're stuck, in our own ways. And still, this one particular area has that same feeling where there's just major religions, all of whom love God and all of whom hate their neighbors and want to kill them. And so we didn't feel any of that tension when we were there. I don't know whether it's normally like that or not, but it really did feel like divine grace there. And it felt like that's why we're here on this planet right now, is to bring that grace into the world, to help us individually as well as that country just move on to the next phase.
It felt like a real bubble of grace that just carried us along the entire time. At the end of the trip, when we were walking the streets toward dusk from that little market back toward the hotel, and there was a strong police presence, and we could have walked. It would have been a good walk, but we could have walked. But we chose to get on the Max and take it through the neighborhoods. And I personally felt at that point that was a really wise decision in terms of safety, because at all the intersections there was a strong police presence. You could feel the tension was really there. But that was the first time I'd felt exposed to it in that way. Even when we'd seen a lot of military presence, I never felt the angst that you would associate with that until that point.
Did they ever ask to see like papers or passport or anything like that?
They did, but not of our group. We were clearly tourists, and again, there was a bubble of grace. But we went through checkpoints where people were definitely being interrogated and checked, and yeah. And then, on the return, there was a lot more intensity and scrutiny. The bubble burst enough to remind us that we're still on planet Earth. Back to business now.
Did you come into Los Angeles? Where did you,
Yeah, we flew into Istanbul and then into LA, and then
where did you feel that when you said we were coming back? Did you feel?
in the Tel Aviv airport,
Oh, really?
the Ben Gurion airport, yeah, and then in the Istanbul airport and in the LA airport, yeah.
Well, we had this halva, and everybody kept, it kept getting screened. Well, what's this halva? What's this tahini paste and date paste? So they were.
So you went to great lengths to bring us that.
Yes.
That halva,
Not plastic explosives. It is
yeah.
I had an interesting experience. I was one of I guess I wasn't the first one to leave, but I left the hotel at 1:30 in the morning to get to the Tel Aviv airport. And when I got there, the woman who asked me some questions immediately went over and got the head Mossad person in charge. And they were very concerned because my luggage was so small. They thought there was a real problem with that. So they were asking me all kinds of questions. Where did I go? Who did I know on the West Bank? is anybody expecting me back in the U.S.? I mean, it was pretty amazing. But I've traveled in a lot of third world countries, so they didn't take my passport. They didn't take me into a separate room of interrogation. I know about those kind of things. So, but it was interesting. They don't do like the take off your shoes, how many liquids do you have? They just give you questions and watch your response. They're very good at that. So it was an interesting experience.
And they mix it up. It's not like stations and one person's at a station and come through. It's like 2 or 3 people will talk here and this person, and somebody will drift off and go talk over there, and somebody else will come up. It was a really very, very unusual approach to security. Clearly effective. They've got a lot more problems than we do. But it was a very unusual and very unpredictable approach to security.
The primary person who was asking me all these questions, his reality, he said, I'm asking you these questions. This was his reality because we have planes blown out of the sky every other day. Have planes blown out of the sky. Well, that's not, in my world, that's not accurate.
Every day?
Every other day. But that was his reality. So,
Maybe that was a figure of speech.
maybe.
So did you ever see any kind of roadside bombs go off or anything like that? 'Cause you said you went
Well-
to that thing with a minefield or something.
Well, when we were in Jerusalem, when we came out of the Church of Nations and we were heading towards our bus, I looked to the right and I didn't say anything, but there was a fire in the hillside. But then there was another fire on the right, and everybody noticed that on the right. And then it was put out pretty quickly. We were watching it.
There wasn't any, we checked on Google News right away to see if there was anything, but
But that's the only,
You know,
Was the internet pretty accessible?
oh yeah. Don't forget, Israel is a high-tech country. They're not, a bunch of podunks. They are high-tech,
Except for where they're not.
except for where they're not. And even then, somebody's got, the cell phone and whatnot. But, I hear more alarms and police response here than I did there. I mean, that's what I think I was trying to say, is that as worried as I was going into it, I knew when I got on the plane that everything would be fine. I had no doubt in my mind, no doubt in my mind. And, I've got a lot at stake. I've got my child. So both of us going away at the same time could be quite a catastrophe. But I wasn't worried. I really wasn't worried. And we got there and people were lovely. People were lovely. And I think you go somewhere and you be genuine and they sense genuine, and it was such a remarkable place to be. Again, it was so remarkable.
The other thing is, we prayed very deeply to make sure that this was Master's will. This wasn't about us just going on vacation or us doing our own thing. The goal of the path is to be where God wants you to be, when He wants you to be there, and in receptivity and service and openness. And we felt that about this trip. And when people started falling away, when tensions went up over there, we asked the question pretty continuously, is this still trying to happen? Is this, is this what Master would have us do? And all along the way, the answer kept coming back, yes. So, you can't do better than that. Yeah. And then whatever you get is what you get. Yeah. And this is what we got.
So you did this process continually before you even left here?
We kind of do it every day.
Okay.
But this was, we were responsible for inviting others on this journey with us. And so, we did a lot of, but, that's, the goal of a devotee is to do that all the time anyway. But yeah, we made sure, we just asked the question constantly, is this trying to happen? Are we being responsible? What's the right decision in this? And, part of it was the awakening of realizing that we're not going just to receive, we're going to carry something there into this troubled place. A disciple's job is to bring light into troubled places. As Jesus said, the doctor doesn't come for people who are well, the doctor comes for people who are ill. And it's a place that needs tremendous amount of light and, a spiritual alternative. Something that can help break down these barriers.
I'm just thinking it's after 9, so maybe it's a good time to wrap up. And if
Anything else
any
before we
questions,
wrap
we can
up?
stick
Any
around,
last?
I had heard once, I read somewhere, I don't remember where now, that when you were talking about, you showed the one picture and you said how Jerusalem is the home to 3 major religions and how there's been all this spiritual activity and energy there for thousands of years. I remember reading somewhere, I'm trying to remember where now, that what I remember reading was that Jerusalem is considered the world capital in spiritual terms or something like that.
You know what? Let's go ahead. I'm happy to answer that, but let's go ahead and let everybody go.
Okay.
Anybody who wants to stay for a discussion about that or kind of thoughts about that can stay.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Let's go, Namata. You want to take us out? Yeah. Let's take a moment and offer a closing prayer.